developing you one more time. COVID-19. What I want to ask you initially, very quick reactions from each of the three of you. At a time when the world is turning inward, when people are scared, perhaps in a different way or more than they've been scared before, what makes the situation of victims of the Rohingya genocide relevant? What is the number one thing that you want the world to know? And I'm going to start with you, Yasmin. Please go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you so much, No Peace Without Justice, for actually, bringing the highlight to the situation of the Rohingya. We don't hear it as much now that each nation states are very busy trying to control the situation within their own, confinement of their states. And often people who are of lesser status, just like refugees, migrant workers, people who are not necessarily protected as well as citizens, are often overlooked, and this is exactly what refugees and people have lived through before. It's just more visible now that they're without the state protection, or they're not at the priority in terms of getting testings, the emergency responses for COVID-19. So since visiting the camps in February, I saw firsthand the fact that the system of how the camps are run, whether it be healthcare situation there, or something as simple as sanitation, water, people having to share bathrooms, families have to share bathrooms and they're complete strangers. Um, Things like getting food, getting rations, none of all of this livelihood within the camps are conducive to, you know, um, to the kind of reality that is going on right now within the world. The COVID-19, recommendations is that we stay, 2 feet apart. Now it's been debunked. We should stay at least probably 10 meters, 10 meters apart, at least. But for them, even the houses, you cannot find the houses that are 2 meters apart. That's a luxury. And so the reason why it's relevant today is because they are the people who cannot afford to actually get sick. Because if they get sick, there is no infrastructure, no system that is available for them or equipped to dealing with this. The numbers that I've heard last time was that the Bangladeshi authorities, of course, and they're, I'm not trying to pin the blame on any specific nation state, and Bangladesh have been so kind to, to take care of the Rohingya refugees for the past 3 years, and this is a very a country ravaged with poverty. People are not able to, live in good conditions on a day-to-day basis, and and they're citizens. So I'm talking about a little bit more on the system that's set up to respond to emergency of various kind. But genocide itself is an emergency, and just like you said, Alison, it's an emergency upon an emergency upon an emergency, and I don't know how many folds of emergency we can actually take. There's got to be some sort of toll that it's taken on upon people who are living there, where they now, I think it's 17 days in lockdown for the refugees. But and social distancing is something that is so much of a luxury. It's not available there. You're not going to be able to do it there. Kids are probably going crazy inside. Imagine we were, we're in perfect condition in this part of the world, in various different countries, specifically in the Western Hemisphere, and we can't even, fathom being inside for that long. Imagine living a shack, living in a plastic sheet that it has no ventilation. Food that's cooked is going to remain, the smell of the food is going to remain in there for a long time. You can't go outside, but you have to share bathrooms with, 10 other families or more. You have to go outside to get water. Um, the healthcare facilities are overworked. Some of the organization and NGOs have actually packed up and left. The numbers that was made available was not sorry. The plan was that the Bangladeshi authorities would make it would respond to such emergency with 1,000 beds for people who might be infected so that they could be isolated. But this is over 1 million people. So when it spread, because there is no social distancing, the houses are not far apart, the bathroom have to be shared. Everything is just so crowded and confined in a small space. People are not able to move around. When we see the spread, and I hope to God it doesn't happen, we're going to see that 1,000, beds are not enough. 10,000 is not enough. 100,000 is not enough. And ventilators that are available in many different countries. I don't think that it is going to be made available there, let alone testings. And there have been reports of people being denied to go to the hospital, and that's just another day in a refugee's life. That happens on a daily basis. Even chronic illnesses are left untreated within the camps. People suffering from contagious diseases like hepatitis, tuberculosis are not being treated, or very, very small numbers of them are being treated properly. So is the system, ready to take on this sort of global pandemic? Probably not. And there's a very slim chance that we'll make it out of this, completely untouched. But people really need to start thinking about those who actually do not have the luxury to afford um, the kind of preventive measures that we have here, or the kind of treatment that we have here, or the testing itself. And so unless we actually look at those who are less fortunate, um, we're actually going to be dealing with this for a long time. Because if it's going to spread in the refugee camps, chances are people are going to travel back and forth from there, and it's not going to ever end. And so to actually try to, prevent more deaths and more destruction from happening, we kind of have to care about everybody, refugees or not, people who have legal protection or not. And so I'm going to leave it there.
Thank you. I think there's some really good points that you've made about why it's relevant to everybody. We're all in this together. So I think those are great points. Thank you. Razia, I'm going to ask you the same question. What makes it relevant? What's the number one thing that you want people to know? You have the floor.
Thank you so much. About I will tell about the recent condition about the camp. The people say before coronavirus, they were gonna die about the hunger because the ration is now limited and it's not distributed on time. And we know the people in the camp, one family have more than 6% or 7%, and now the ration is reduced. Those who are getting is very they reduce the ration, and 1 month already gone, maximum people they didn't get their ration. So, and when we asked the CIC and administration, they say because of the lockdown we are taking care about systematically, but systematically the time is gone, they have no ration in their home. So it's difficult. Before when we ask about the coronavirus, we want to give some information about coronavirus. They are just one thing, where we're going to get about the ration. We want food. And other thing, about the hygiene material. It's not available in the camp, and few of NGO they got the permission and they distribute, but it's not enough. When you see in the one small camp, there is more than 6,000 people. And if anyone distribute it, it's just like a one-time usable. So lack of masks, lack of hygiene, they cannot whatever they have in this between the limited access, they cannot protect themselves. So if anything, this COVID-19 will attack in the camp, I cannot think about, and I don't want to think about this because just now Yasmin already shared about the system of their living. It's impossible about the social distance. It's very tough, but at least they can prevent about from basic what you say basic protection about the hand sanitize and wash and about the masks, but this is not available. So the NGOs and who are administration above the camp, they have to think about that. So they have to as soon as materials, and we know they have the budget, and already we know the Bangladesh government, they are taking so many action and so many steps, but we didn't see any action in the camp. It's just like they are a part of the world. It's just like people are worrying about their own people, but these people have no guardian, no one is thinking about that. Just like they are locked down in a small area, no one is thinking about that there is some human who live in the camp. They also have right to live, and they are thinking about the food, they are thinking about the scare about the coronavirus. And this is very the frustrating timing. Me also, and they are every day we are hearing so many things. The first thing, they are just want ensure they are Russian, then have to supply the material, hygiene material. That is the main point. And I don't have to say anything because already Yasmin, he described about the camp situation, and I am sharing the recent situation. And about, I know that today, maybe from yesterday, few days ago, there is some shop, they are allowed to be open, but that now the today, everyone is stopped. So if they have money, they cannot buy. There is one thing is very scary. They have money, but they cannot buy, and then they cannot be even in the go to the outside, maybe the camp outside the host community market. They're not allowed to be. So it's like they will die about their essential need. And about treatment, I don't argue with about the treatment because there is no treatment, just some center. We need more focus on that situation. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for underscoring how the difficult situation people already in not being able to get food also puts people more at risk of catching this horrendous disease. Tonkin, I'm going to ask again you the same question. What makes it relevant? What is the number one thing that you want people to know? The floor's yours. You'll need to unmute, Tonkin. Sorry.
Thank you, Nobis. Without justice, hosting this event is very important. It's very timely, where international community need to know what is happening to the Rohingyas, and other minorities in Burma, where the fightings are going on. We can see on the news these days where them, fighting against Arkan army and Burmese army is escalating day by day. And first thing, 1 million, I will talk about Rohingya, including other minorities, where in Rakhine state and Khin state, 1 million people are not, allowing, denying, especially potentially crucial, potentially life-saving information regarding on COVID-19. Burmese government and military systematically doing it. And on top of that, there are existing problems such as malnutrition, inadequate water supply, and sanitation have been already compounded by the deadly threat posed by the COVID-19 crisis. So where we can see the world is doing social distancing and supporting their citizen in our country, Rohingyas and especially some minorities facing, especially the Rohingyas were much more targeted. you know that is serious crisis going on. I mean, in intentionally they are doing that. So we can see that. And that 128,000 IDPs, Rohingyas, are in IDPs, humanitarian aid being blocked, you know, by the not only the military led by Aung San Suu Kyi's government, NLD government. That is what we can see situation.
Thank you very much, Tung Khin. Yasmin, I'm going to come back to you for a minute because you talked a bit broadly about the experiences in the camps and what you saw when you visited there in February. Last time we met, when we were speaking about the ICJ case and the genocide, you spoke very passionately and convincingly about gender issues and how they relate to the genocide. I was wondering, what are your reflections on the impact of gender mixed in with the COVID-19, mixed in with the genocide? I mean, what are you seeing now in that sense? Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking that. I was trying to note down that very very angle. When we're talking about genocide, when we're talking about issues that have to do with mass atrocity, um, the, the the very core existence of those those terrible situations is that people in authorities are able to victimize somebody who have a lot less power, and in excuse me, in many different circumstances, women are the lesser of the power within the family, within the community, within a society. um, Given that context, uh, Rohingya women suffer disproportionately more than Rohingya men. Not that there is anything um, any more weight that I'm giving to the suffering, but it's just the reality of these sort of situation when the genocide, the effects of genocide, or the effects of ongoing genocide is felt in a prolonged period of time. Women tend to have to bear more burdens of now they have to raise family, they have to raise their children inside the camps without the children being able to go outside. How do you entertain children inside a small shack with no electricity, no ventilation, no fan, nothing to keep the heat away? How do you keep the family together before you go crazy in 2 hours? And now they've been in lockdown for probably more than 16 days. And that's just the very small problems that they're having, apart from starvation, apart from the food ration that's not being given out, apart from having reproductive health issues and not being able to treatment, not being able to seek treatments, having to go to the washrooms now, but it's in lockdown. How do you go to the washroom? You already don't have privacy. um, and this is just small things that we don't realize refugees women specifically would have to go through every single day. How do you keep the family fed when you would have to go outside, try to buy food when you yourself don't have money, don't make any money? All of this stuff just compound and becomes this hurdle that I think we on and I'm going to emphasize the fact that we live in a very, very fortunate part of the world. A lot of at least three of us, apart from Khala Razia, who's who's dealing with a lot of different things in Bangladesh. But I'm going to talk specifically about Canada and the US and Europe specifically, where resources are available. Governments are trying to their best to protect their citizens and prevent the ongoing spread. We're looking at a class system, and we see it now more clearly than ever, where some people are now essential workers where they weren't before. Now, under the circumstances, they're suddenly appreciated and they're told to keep working even though it's a pandemic. And we see, the class divide, but we don't see, and I don't think that people put an emphasis on this, that refugees are already less of a human than most of us could ever be. And because they're less of a human already, you place a woman or being a woman there in the mix, in the adjectives, and you get even lesser status. And so we're talking about the class system, the feminist issues that are intertwined in different ways and cause a lot more anxiety and problems. We talk about mental health and trying to cope within this culture of lockdown and social distancing in this part of the world where things are available, where therapy might be available afterwards, you can go outside. But for the refugees, already having been raped, having been sexually harassed, having been going through so much within the past 3 years, if you've not experienced anything, which is almost impossible for someone to actually leave their country and uproot themselves because have nothing better to do. That's not the case. For them to be in that situation, and now adding this COVID-19 situation and the fear of coronavirus, which is very, very real. There's a lot of rumors that are going around. Internet is not available. It's still the shutdown has not been lifted. It was lifted for maybe 2 hours and then it was back on. The shutdown has happened for the longest time. Information is not available. And when information is not available, it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to fear for your lives and you're not going to know what to do. In a situation where sanitation and things for cleaning, like Khala Razia had said, things are not available. So it adds on to those fear. And I don't know if we're going to come out of this equipped to dealing with whatever is to come next, because that's the reality of being refugees. Is it's never going to stop. You're going to have to deal with something until unless the world sees the situation a little bit better and try to remedy it. And one of the things that I just really quickly want to say is I worry a lot about the refugees, about the camp situation, about domestic violence, that is going to, that has surged actually in many different countries where there is a reporting system. But in the camps, there already isn't that system of support. A lot of the women groups that I've met, and they're phenomenal, people, they've been walking around door to door, increasing their own contacts with people in order for them to educate the women, educate the men, educate the children, how to clean themselves, how to, make sure that they're not, swept up with all of this rumors and fears. And they've been, going around using their own resources, refugee resources. And these are, they have a couple of dollars and they bought masks and they just go around and basically distribute it. And this is such a, I feel extremely, extremely, how do I even say it? I feel quite disappointed in myself and many other people where we have a lot of resources. I cannot buy a mask here, but I probably can send some money to, to help. I could probably donate at this point in time. I know that, financial situations is quite rough at this point because a lot of us are not working. But for those of us who have the ability, we can actually save lives just by donating maybe even $1 or $10, a very, very insignificant amount of money. Now, these people have been going around door to door, but they're not going to be able to do it all because this is a million people we're talking about. And we're talking about a refugee camps that are very, very, very security aware. Like the authorities do not allow people to leave. There are fencing issues that have, kind of come up before, but that's not why we're talking about this. We can talk about this another time. So, moving around is not easy, but they're risking their own safety and their own lives to do this. And these women are not given resources. These are the women that are actually, the community leaders and other women come to them to talk to them about domestic violence. How do they talk to each other now that there is no way to move around? How do people try to survive within an already very, very, very strange and confusing and stressful time within their own, tiny huts? How do women actually come out of this, alive? We're not talking about, healthy. We're not talking about not contracting it. We're talking about how do they make it out alive, if the lockdown persists for another month or so. It is going to pose a lot of risk. And before I end, just that one point about women who are now being detained within the prison in Myanmar. Personal note: I have a couple of family members who actually was recently arrested, and they were arrested for crossing from Rakhine State into Rangoon, and one of the family members is my own cousin, my own first cousin, and she's 16. Imagine leaving a situation in Rakhine State, which is pretty bad, having no families, living in a prison cell, going to court, coming back. That's all that you get, in terms of contacts with the outside world. If anything happens, regardless of whether or not it's a COVID-19 or any other diseases, how would it affect, her lives? Hoping that she would be able to get out of this situation of traveling without a permit as a Rohingya, whereas it's okay for other for other citizens, for other people who are from a non-ethnic background, to be able to travel all around the country. Again, she's 16. It is so already very desperate and destitute within the prison and the judicial system within Myanmar. So this is also very, very scary for the detainees, because they're in Rangoon. A lot of people travel abroad, coming back, and there isn't testings that are widely available within Myanmar. Authorities tend to suppress the reports that there is anything wrong at all. And so that's quite scary.
Okay, thank you, Yasmin. Thank you, Yasmin. You mentioned issues like fencing and other things like that. So I wanted to ask you, Razia, there are many issues that arose before COVID-19. There are many issues happening now. There will be issues afterwards. What are your main recommendations for what the international community need to do in order to move us past this with maybe a view to the future?
These people have to go their own country. I mean, because in this camp, their life is anyway, there's not secure. And people are desperate to live in this camp. And the trafficking is not stopping. In this situation, still is going on. But because they are jumping the other country and jumping in the river because the better life, but they are not, didn't get the better life. They're dying, they're detained. This is the main thing. And this small area, this is not, they have the future. Think about these children, our children and the youth. They are become frustrated. So we need a solution. So how can we overcome this situation? And international community have to focus on this issue and pressure Myanmar government to accept their own people. If we are not find a solution, these people will be vanish here, and the future, I can say there is no future if we are not taking any action yet, because there is a lots of youth, they are hoping they will go and find their better, maybe they think they are always, they have the hope. I'm very glad that this youth have still the hope. They are depending like diaspora and that international community, even they are keep hoping in the ICJ, that ICJ will bring the solution. But and they also know the truth, it is not going to happen in 10 or 5 or 6. But anyway, in this moment, we have to find a solution. How can these people have to return with safety and dignity, so they can secure their future life? So, because I'm living here, I am in the ground level, I'm just telling one thing: we have to find a solution as soon as possible. And the future, I cannot say about the future, but need to be solution. We need a solution. That's it.
Thank you. And I think that's a really important point that you just made, that we need action now to secure the future. Khin, I'd like to turn the floor over to you. In that context, we need action now to secure the future. What does that mean for people at risk of genocide inside Myanmar right now, also facing this COVID-19? I'd like your thoughts on that.
We have to look at first thing in Rakhine State, where the internet been shut down. There is no information already. They provided life-saving information regarding on COVID-19. They have not provided, and the internet is totally shut down. Secondly, government restricted. Government restricted humanitarian aid access. For this COVID-19, how dangerous is it? We need like the food and sanitation and water and everything is needed, and they are blocking humanitarian aid, Rohingya camps, and there is no freedom of movement, access to healthcare and clinics being segregated. And also there are, military continuing genocidal acts against Rohingya community and others in Rakhine State. Particularly, they targeted to the Rohingya. That is, we all know about it. And here one thing, what international community should do. First thing, this is emergency within the emergency, as you put the title. We need to look at first thing, immediate from UN and other, powerful state have to come up to lift internet, internet ban in Rakhine State. And secondly, all humanitarian access should be allowed. And thirdly, genocidal acts need to be stopped. Rohingyas are not allowed, extortions and security forces been still, killing Rohingyas, remote areas, and human rights abuses and genocidal acts are continuing, and that need to be stopped. And also on top of that, health and clinic, that should be on top priority to allow Rohingyas to get to the clinic and healthcare facility to get back. Of course, the situation is worsening day by day, but international community is busy with their own. But they should not forget the victims of genocide. We, international community, did not take action while we were facing genocide. And then after the genocide happened, 1 million Rohingyas now they are in a camp, the world largest refugee camp, where there is such a big danger if the COVID-19, infected there. We all know. And international community did not take any action after genocide. Now again, international community should not be failed to stop, to stop this genocide. We are very in emergency crisis. Rohingyas are not treated as a human being in Burma. It is time international community must act. Thank you.
Thank you. We're coming towards the end of our discussion. I'm going to keep the floor with you, Tonkin, because you mentioned now some of the things that the international community has failed to do and some of the things that they need to do. Razia has said some things as well that the international community needs to do. My question to you, as we close this panel discussion, is what do you want the audience to do? What do you want us to do? What do you want me to do? What can we do to help in this crisis, in this situation?
First thing, to write to your government, to raise with your government. No matter Belgium government is facing this COVID-19, it's very important that Belgium government have to take. Belgian government is taking a leading part of the EU. So have to come up with other EU countries. They have sent a strong message, by setting up timeline and benchmark that the world is facing COVID-19, what we have never seen before. In this crisis, it is time they have to restore the rights of the Rohingya and lifting all restrictions and allowing basic human rights. That is very important right now. That's what the government can do. And international community, humanitarian organization have to come up with governments, and others should pressure to Burmese government. And then the humanitarian organization can get access, can save many lives of the Rohingya and other minorities in Burma. And secondly, powerful UN member of states, they have to call their countries, they have to write on their governments, to take immediate action to discuss in Security Council to to leave this restriction and the rights of the Rohingya, to save the lives of Rohingya and other minorities of Burma. That's very important. That's my message.
Thank you very much. I think also important for the UN Security Council to take up the genocide question and to follow closely what Myanmar is doing in their reports to the ICJ. But Razia, I'm going to ask you the same question. You said some things that governments and the international community can do. What can the audience watching tonight do?
One thing, I wish we will overcome this this COVID-19, but because life is going on, whatever we are locked down or not, but life is going on. But don't forget these persecuted people who are living you can say Bangladesh also a crowded country. They also facing their own problems, whatever they are supporting these people. But these people need more attention. And about the COVID-19, I think the humanitarian aid have to be more concerned about these people. And about inside the Rakhine state, Tunkin now described about what about in the inside matter. The Rohingya also living over there, and also other ethnics, they need to be live. So in this moment, and whatever we know, the atrocity is not stopped. The killing is not stopped. It's ongoing. So these people need a security, and Myanmar government have to think, and international community have to pressure on Myanmar government they have to be stopped this killing, and they have to be accept the basic human assistance, and the aid and everything, and about the treatment. And I cannot think about the treatment and about the health facilities whatever I'm seeing in Bangladesh. Even the Bangladesh cannot control what is everything they have, and even in the camp forget about. And what about the Rakhine? It is like a step by step. So this two situation I'm seeing, but I cannot see in the Rakhine state, and I think this is a worst moment for them. So think about these people as a human. So they have to be pressure on, and about the Security Council, they need a proper action. It's not like they just give a submission or a statement or just say request. No, there is no more request. We need action. So that is my concern. And I'm telling, and I am also frustrated to see this situation about our people. No, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Razia. Finally, Yasmin, final word. You already said people can give money, perhaps. People can donate. The audience who are watching, is there anything else the audience can do?
It is quite a very difficult time to actually suggest anything or recommend anything, because I myself am struggling with trying to find things to do, or trying to find ways to be able to help as productively as possible. One thing I want the audience to remember, though, is we're in quarantine or not, we're on lockdown or not, we're dealing with a global pandemic, deaths, destruction, whatever it is, we have no excuse to treat each other as any less than human. We owe it to each other that much. I think that it's time we really, really hold each other accountable for what we do, for how we leave this world. And although that sounds very idealistic, it starts there from our ways of thinking. We can change it. There is a lot of time right now on our hands, at least on this part of the world where we're on lockdown, where we're being somewhat taken care of. I think that for us to really internalize and rethink our strategy of how we go about dealing with the problems around the world, and care a little bit more, not just for yourself, not just for your family, but care about humans. And let's rethink what we've been institutionalized to be thinking about, how we put worth on each of the human lives. If you're from a certain country, your lives are worth a little bit more. If you're from a destitute brown countries, I'm going to use a little bit of slur here, you're worth a lot less. And that's just that's quite messed up, that we've been able to carry that for a long time in this vastly fast moving world and capitalist focused. So now we have the time. Everything has radically stopped for us to really rethink a strategy. And a lot of people talk about environment issues, and a lot of how animals have come outside of their hidings, because there's not a lot of human outside now. I think that it as much of this has been stressful and terrifying and really, really sad, it is also a really high time for us to rethink our strategy, really rethink our what we want to do, what we want to achieve as a human race, not just as nation state, not just as a UN agency, not just an organization that's trying to do good in the world, but really rethink our existence on this earth. Really, are we leaving it in a better place than we find it? And again, holding each other accountable, not just holding someone who is having the same status as you, but holding the people in power accountable. And just as, Khala Razia and Khin has said, really think about how we all can do, to affect the changes at the government level, at the international government level, but also, at a very personal level, trying to talk about these issues with people around you. Don't just, worry and really get consumed by the terror and the fears of this pandemic. We're all going to be fine. I think, we just really, at the end of the day, we have to think about this. If we really listen to the measures and protect ourselves and try, every possible ways to protect ourselves and get treated and really looking out for the signs, we're going to be fine. But there are people who cannot afford the luxury to be fine, even though, they're not dealing with a pandemic, even though there's not a spread of this sort of disease yet. They're already dealing with something. And so extending that, that humanity would be important. And it's not a kindness. I really want to emphasize this is we're not kind for doing something for the refugees. We actually are part of the problem. And so realizing that and knowing that you take part in this responsibility of how our entire human race do or does is important. And so I want to leave it there, and I'm hoping that our audience and people who would find this video later would be able to continue to support the Rohingya refugees, the people who are working for the refugees, people who are trying to raise awareness around the issues within almost every other countries that are dealing with this sort of problems as well. And I hope that at some point we can really come together and discuss this in person, because that's a lot more that's a lot more I think it's a lot more connecting. I feel very far away from all of you now, but it's important for us to not forget that we do owe it to each other to not leave anyone behind. And I really, really hope that we all support each other and support the people who are the frontline workers and the people who are trying to, make do with whatever they have to better the situation within the refugee camps, inside Rakhine State, everywhere else, around the ethnic communities as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And as always, appreciate what you say, but I think there's nothing wrong with being idealistic. You can be idealistic and still take concrete action. It's about the goals that we all have. So we have now run out of time, but I would like to, before I thank you all, to remind our audience out there that we will have another webcast next week, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, on domestic violence and confinement in our Beyond COVID-19 series. Please feel free to visit our website at npwj.org to keep abreast of what we're going to be speaking about in the, well, however long this thing lasts, in the weeks ahead. But let me just conclude by saying, once again, a big thank you to all of you, to Khin, to Razia, to Yasmin. As always, it's wonderful to speak with you all. And as you said, Yasmin, I hope we meet again in person soon, and I hope we meet again in a spirit of the happiness that we had last time we met together at the end of January. So thank you again all very much, and I wish you
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.